Welcome back to Novel Idea. My name is Dia. Today we're going to do a little wrap up of the last 5 books that I read at the end of January. All right. The first book that I finished since I last wrapped up what I was reading is A Dog of Flanders. This is by, I'm going to say Ouida. I'm not sure that that is correct. It's going to be up on the screen or over here. This is so sad, you guys. I was reading this for the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. I think that I had seen the movie of this a very long time ago, but I had never actually read this beautiful little copy that I have on my shelf. So the first prompt in the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge for the path for Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was to read a book with a dog on the cover. And so I chose A Dog of Flanders. Do you want to talk about sad, depressing? Oh my gosh, this book. It is about a young, very, very young boy who becomes orphaned, and his destitute grandfather takes him in, and never complains about it. Just takes him in. They figure out some way to make ends meet for a little while. And during that time, they happen upon a dog that has been beaten, senseless, starved in a ditch. They take him home, they nurse him back to health, and thank goodness that they do, because he stays by this little orphan boy for the rest of the orphan boy's life. He pulls a little dog cart so that the boy can take milk around to sell it to help make extra money, and it comes to a very tragic end. It's so sad. Like absolutely nothing goes his way in this book. Nothing is beneficial to him except for this dog. Whew. It was a rough one. I enjoyed the writing style of the book. I did not enjoy the story, but it's still, I'm still really glad that I read it. It's not heartwarming. It is not endearing. It's just plain sad. This, Gemma, if you are watching, this is totally a book that you could get behind. Okay, next book was A Rome of One's Own. And this is by Emma, I want to say Southen. I wish I could have liked this book. So it's supposed to be a history of the women who are forgotten pretty much in the histories of Rome, but how they still had such a great part in shaping Rome, its men, its histories. And this author, though, I wanted to love this book. I picked it up mainly because of the We Love Jenny readathon that is happening in February. And I just read whatever I want when I want to. And Jenny and I had a bond over ancient literature and ancient history and that kind of stuff. And so when I picked this up, I was hoping that it was going to be one that I really enjoyed, and it completely was not. The author is very crass and flippant, and she even uses very like modern vernacular in the way she has her characters speak. Like there are certain characters that she allows them to kind of have a voice in this book, even though it's nonfiction. And I think it was well researched, but the way that that research is presented is in a way too modern of a style. I'm talking about the words that she uses, and it doesn't honor these women if that's what she was trying to do. It feels so wrong. I'm sure that there are many, many people that like this book. I was not one. I was very disappointed. So, moving on. I reread Dragon Singer by Anne McCaffrey. Last month, I read Dragon Song. And so I wanted to follow up with Dragon Singer. It's one of my all-time favorite science fiction books. And it's a little science fiction, a little fantasy. It's another planet, humanoid people, but another planet, and populated with dragons and a threat that is environmental that they struggle against. And this is the story, though, about just one girl on this planet, and the way that she grows up and struggles to use her gifts and be loved and be appreciated for those gifts. And it's just wonderful. So this is the first book is kind of her realizing that maybe she can't stay where she is in order to have those dreams and giftings and love come about. So she leaves, and we're kind of left at the end of book one wondering what happens next. And so Dragon Singer is about the next step. The beauty of the book, I think, is in the portrayal of this young girl and the way that she is level-headed and kind and generous of spirit. She's just wonderful. So really, really enjoyed rereading it. All right, next one is I, Claudius. This is by Robert Graves. And this was originally published in like the 1930s. I was so surprised to learn that. I liked this so much. I did not know going into it what to expect, especially after reading A Rome of One's Own. It's written in an autobiographical style by Claudius. It takes part in his life from 24 BC to 54 AD or AD 54. And he goes through Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, and Claudius. And Claudius lives through all of those I mean, the three prior to him, as well as his own reign. And what a horrible, horrible life he had. It opens with Augustus trying to find an heir, wanting to find an heir for when he passes away. And Livia, who is the second wife of Augustus, is quite the manipulator, conniving Jezebel of a woman. In fact, most of the women in here are portrayed in a very unkind light, true to the time. Let's put it that way. I think that it probably has some criticism about the way that women are portrayed, but I think that it's really true to the setting and the time period. I think that he's trying to write something that would be historically accurate. I just loved the way that Robert Graves chose to narrate this portion of history. It's Claudius telling his own story. It's first person. He says at the beginning that he wants to be truthful and as honest as possible, and that means that there is going to be some criticism for some people that maybe we would like in somebody else's history. He just refuses to sugarcoat anything. And there are some parts that were a little hard to read, and I definitely wouldn't want to watch this. Everybody kept saying, what a great show this was. I would not want to watch the debauchery. I wouldn't want to, there a lot of just, prostitution, and not prostitution in the fact that they were paid, but just prostituting, I guess, of women and incest and all of that kind of thing. And I wouldn't want to put that in front of my eyes, but the way that it was written on the page was not difficult to read. It's something that we know historically happened. And so it was just so well done. I love the fact that I am learning through story and learning through somebody that I like. I like Claudius. I don't think he was perfect. Not even close. I enjoyed just hearing him want to do the right thing, not having a desire to have power and rule. He wanted to be loved. He wanted to have people around him that appreciated his mind and his heart, and not just simply that he was related to Augustus, or that he was related to Germanicus, who was his brother, who was also poisoned. So, I, Claudius by Robert Graves. Lastly, we have Winesburg, Ohio. This is going to be a difficult one to wrap up succinctly, but I will say, first of all, again, a book that was nothing like I was expecting. This time in not a good way. I thought that it was going to be kind of this quiet, Midwestern, early 1900s, simple lifestyle novel. And that's not what it was. It's my own fault. I actually appreciate that I did go into it blind, because I don't think I would have picked it up if I wouldn't have gone into it blind. He's being so naughty. This is a novel of short stories, basically. Most of the short stories do have a common character, not all of them. The only commonality between all of them is that they are people that are living in the town of Winesburg, Ohio. The very first opening short story, The Grotesques. And as I was reading, I thought, he can't be using this word the way that I think it should be used, or the way that I would use it today. And so I went and looked it up. And the word grotesque, I'm gonna do it right now, in fact. I'm gonna pull it up. Okay, so here's what the word grotesque means. Pulled out of proportion, distorted truth. So misshapen and distorted from truth. And when you read the opening line or the opening story of this book, he talks about, it's an old author, an elderly author, who is writing about the grotesques. And they are people who have decided on a truth for themselves and have made that truth their ultimate thing. And that truth has created them to be grotesque. And so you have to remember that as you're reading these stories. You end up with at least one person in each story that has latched onto what they feel is the right truth for them. And they have done that to the detriment of all other truth. What are you doing? Leave him alone. Okay, so to all other truths, they've blocked those out, or they've pushed them aside, or they have denied them. And it has misshapen them. It has distorted them. And we are being told the stories of their distortion. And so they're difficult. They're difficult to read. There's nothing really truly beautiful about any of the stories. It reminds me very much of Edith Wharton, in the fact that they never get to hope. It's constantly hope deferred, making the heart sick. It's constantly believing the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, not communicating. The stories are very much themes of isolation and identity, loneliness. They tend to expose hypocrisy and frustration and inhibitions. And at first, with the first few stories, we have our main character, okay, all right, George Willard, who we seem to have an appreciation for, because he appears to be a person who people can confide in. They can rely on George to be a listening ear and an open heart. As the stories progress, we find that George himself is a grotesque, but we don't seem to have as much sympathy for him from Sherwood Anderson in the telling of his grotesqueness. For some reason, Sherwood Anderson seems to expect more of George and has less compassion. He tells his shortcomings with less softness. And the further along we get in the stories, the more grotesque people become, and the more grotesque we are hearing about. We have little glimmers where we think, oh, okay, this is going to have some hope. And then the rug gets, taken from underneath you. So I just don't know how to describe this book other than to say it is just really hard. It is really hard. I was hoping it was going to be more of a dandelion wine or Lake Wobegon, or one of the elevated mundanity kind of books that I love so much. And it was instead something that made me search my own heart. It made me have to really dig to understand. And I constantly had to remind myself of that definition of grotesque. Because the further along we got in the book, the more I felt that my way of finding grotesque, which would be yucky, icky, gross, and not just appearance-wise, but the way that makes you feel like you need to take a shower because you're covered in yuck. And the further along that the book got, and the more that I had to read these stories, the more I felt that way. And so I had to remind myself of the fact that these were people that were believing a singular thing, that they were allowing the fullness of truth in life to shape them and form them. The other thing that I needed to remind myself was that this was not the entire town. We were just hearing about the grotesques. And so that's another thing that I needed to remind myself. Also, I will say that a lot of the things that were happening in this little tiny small town in Ohio felt much more urban in quality. So they felt like they should have been happening in a city. And it felt like in a small town, I just don't know that I could believe that it happened. Anyway, I did have 2 or 3 stories in here that I really, really liked. That really prompted empathy in me. But 2 or 3 is all. I really liked the very end of the book. Like, especially the last few lines. Yeah, just a hard book to read, hard book to describe, hard book to review. Winesburg, Ohio, Sherwood Anderson. I'd love to know if you guys have read this. I would love to know what you think of it, because it was difficult. It was difficult. Thank you to Hannah so much for reading it with me, for validating some of my feelings about things, and for putting into words some things that I just couldn't. Yeah, and for just wanting to talk about it with me. I just really appreciated you. Thank you so much for doing it. All right, that's it for January, you guys. So anyway, thank you for joining me today, and I will talk to you again in another video very soon. Please like if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to. Bye, everyone.